What is meant by clinical trial? Clinical trials are simply said to research studies in human beings or human volunteers to answer the specific health questions. They are primary way to research to find out the new treatment like new drug or new medicinal device which is safe to people or society. In clinical trials, there are integral part of new drug discovery development and it involves the studies of human subjects where the protocol design studies are conducted which provide information and data support to the National Drug Administration and Food Drug Administration. Basically, the clinical trials are two types. They are interventional clinical trials and another one is observational clinical trials. In interventional clinical trials, in these clinical trials, it determines the experimental treatments and new ways which is used to know the therapies which are safe and effective for the humans. And while it comes to observational clinical trials, in these trials, the public health will be addresses in large group of people or populations. The health conditions can be minded and then participants in such trials do not receive any treatment but may ask to provide information and blood sample etc. This is about the clinical trials. And when we move to the phases of clinical research or clinical trials, what are the phases which involves in the clinical trial and clinical research? In these clinical trials or clinical research, there are 6 phases, that is preclinical trials. In these preclinical trials, it is a step which is prior to clinical trials. Here, animals are used for the study of drug. It means the testing are based on the animal studies and results of these studies are served as a clinical testing in humans. In these preclinical trial study, there are two types. They are vivo testing and in vitro testing. In vitro testing, experimentals will be carried out outside the body. In vivo testing, the experiments are carried out intact living body. This is about the preclinical trials. While it comes to clinical trials, human-based testing. This is a human-based testing. In these clinical trials, humans are used as a volunteers or who are used for these trials, which is carried out on human volunteers by using safe, effective drugs of preclinical testing. After testing the drugs on the animals, the drugs are tested on the human volunteers. These clinical testing further get classified into 5 different phases. They are phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. These are the 4 phases of clinical trials. Let us know. In 0 phase, human microdosing studies are the phase 0 is also called as human microdosing studies. The aim of these studies is to learn the how drug processed in the body and how it affects the body. In this study, the drug will processed in the body and how it affects the body. Here, very small dose of drug is given to group of people like 10 to 15 people. After the medication, it acts differently than expected. The investigators will likely to do some additional preclinical research before deciding to continue the trial. In this phase 0 trial, 10 to 15 people are used, and this medication is used to study the how to learn the drug process, how to it affects the body. After that, phase 1 clinical trials. In phase 1, this is designed to study safety, side effects, best dose, and formulation method for the drug. In this phase, there are 20 to 100 people are used. This dose in this phase 1, drug is found to be safe. After moving to phase 1, the phase 2 clinical trials are performed. In this phase 2 studies, the drugs given to the people, particularly 100 to 300 persons, this clinical effect can be checked. And after moving to clinical trial 2, in clinical trial 3, third phase, 300 to 3000 people are used, and medical disorders and diseases can be observed. In fourth phase, this is also called as marketing surveillance or confirmatory trial. It involves pharmacovigilance and safety evaluation of drug which receives after permission to be sold. It is a long-term study to evaluate the drug adverse effects and side effects. So, this is a long-term process. This is about the 5 phases of clinical trials and clinical research.